What's something that just grows? It's not people. Can you imagine if your height just grew forever?
Yeah.
You would die. The only thing that grows uninhibited is cancer.
And then it doesn't. That's
and then
the thing.
It kills you.
Cancer looks like Ninja. It grows a lot, but then you die, and then the cancer has to die because it runs out of food. Ninja's Twitch stream and cancer have the same growth trajectory.
What's good, man?
What's up, dude? Episode 27.
Is it 27? We had two 25s.
Yeah, that's how we roll, dude. 25, 25, 27.
It was like a hotel with a 13th floor.
I was just going to make that joke. We're so similar. People in the comments have mentioned that
we don't ever disagree with
that
one
we're
another.
very similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we disagree, but
it's a problem. It's a bit of an echo chamber.
Yeah. Well, I'm a flip-flopper. That's the thing. If you're beating me in an argument, I'll just switch to your point of view.
Yeah. Well, this is why I would like to have people call in. So if you want to call in and discuss anything that we talked about on any previous episode, you disagree. I see a lot of people, because I talked about free will at length once, and now I just casually mention it as if you've seen every episode that I don't believe in free will, and people are like, how do you just say that?
Yeah. How do you just throw that away?
And then not follow it up. I'll have to do a clip on it so that I'm not repeating myself.
I think our audience, though, is still going to be fairly intelligent, probably around our 20s and 30s age. Let's get some neo-Nazis to call in. You know what I mean?
Like,
let's get some ex-KKK members.
Yeah. So there was a guy who on a TED Talk, I don't know if you saw his TED Talk, I forget his name. I think it was Daryl something. He's a black man who befriended a Grand Dragon, I think they're called, of the KKK. Did you ever see it?
You're talking about the reporter? Story's incredible.
Is he a reporter? He's a guy, I thought.
There was a reporter who wanted to do an article and befriended the Grand Master of the KKK or whatever. And it starts by the guy's like, I hate you, but I'll give you the story or whatever. Yeah. And then they hang out and they hang out and they hang out. And then by the end, the Grand Master KKK says, I still hate black people, but this guy's cool. He's cool by me. And you're like, well, wait, why do you still hate, this guy? Haven't you learned they're all just people? He's like, no, I still hold to my KKK values, but I absolutely in my heart make an exception for this guy who I like.
So I think it's the same guy. I don't know what the ultimate result of this guy's personal transformation was, but he did leave the KKK, this particular guy.
Oh, really?
He gave him his robe, and at the end, it's a powerful moment in the TED Talk. He opens this closet that he has, and he holds up this guy's KKK.
Oh, wow. I must have gotten it mid-story.
Yeah. Well, or it could have been a different person.
Fascinating.
But, yeah, so interesting. And the guy, you got to give him all the credit in the world, because he shows up to a hostile environment.
Oh, yeah.
He shows up. He said he thought he was going to get shot the first interview that he ever did with this guy, because he had like a bodyguard with him, and he was not pleased. He thought he was just going to be a normal reporter, and it turns out that he's a black guy who he hates, right? Yeah. And so he thought he was going to get shot, and then they talked again, and then he invited him to his house, and then after a while he felt comfortable in his house. So anyways, call in. We'll make friends with everybody.
Yeah.
So here's what I got this week. Not a ton. By the way, we're going to 2 maybe.
Oh, yeah, we should have said that.
Yeah, we should lock that in.
We're going to try to do 2 podcasts a week from now on. So hopefully one will release on Tuesday and one will release on Friday.
Yes. And we're working on times and all that stuff. We'll hammer that out. If you feel the quality dips, let us know. We'll go to once a week. But normally I get to read a lot, and I get to read half as much, basically. And this week we've been working a lot on business, so I haven't gotten as much free time. But related to business, one thing that I've thought about and I've seen over and over, and we're trying to do right now, is that there was an H3 podcast clip that caught my eye, and it was about Ninja. And they show his Twitch growth. This is even before he left for Mixer. And it has this hockey stick parabolic growth.
Yeah.
Dude, and then it goes down.
Yeah.
And it goes down a lot. And this is months before Mixer comes out. And then, of course, he makes this move to Mixer. But his average views are still incredible. He's one of the most viewed people out there, but nowhere near his peak. And you look at a number of other people over the history of YouTube and these things, and this is very common. You get this explosive growth. You keep doing the same thing, and doing the same thing no longer gets you the same results. It's like the inverse of what that insanity rule is. Is Summer trying to get in here?
Oh, no, I'm just bribing with treats. She'll be fine.
This is like a normal child. You just got to give him treats. Okay, please let the adults talk now.
Okay,
but
good girl.
In any event, it made me think about our channel. It made me think about what we have to do if you do not reinvent yourself in the entertainment world or even in the info world, right? You're done after 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, we could keep making breakdowns that are of top-notch quality, But if they're not different in some material way, I actually wouldn't expect our channel to grow at the same rate, and it wouldn't get smaller necessarily, but the acceleration would slow down.
Yeah.
And in some ways, we've seen it in the last month. So month to month, you can never tell. But we got to keep reinventing, man.
We're Hannah Montana, and it's time for us to become Miley Cyrus.
I don't know that story at all.
You're just gonna have to run with it. You're just gonna have to trust me.
But yeah, and
shave your head. It's time for a tongue ring. That's what I'm saying.
So I want to figure out how one knows what things to go into, and I think the best person to study is PewDiePie. So at some point in the next couple weeks, I'm going to go look at his video history, which is going to be mountainous, and see how and why and when he decided to make the changes that he made. I think a huge part of it is following what he's interested in at any given time, but also with an ear to the audience. So I'm not totally sure. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Did H3 say that they had seen something similar? Like when Ninja was saying this was my growth, this was my drop, did they say, oh yeah, that happened to us too?
No, so it wasn't actually an interview. They were just looking at his Twitch dashboard, essentially, of his stats. And then they made the connection to PewDiePie. They're like, who hasn't done this? Yeah. PewDiePie, who just had his biggest month ever. Like it's incredible after all that time that he's still, he does things that are wildly successful and gets out. He's got impeccable timing with his transitions. So something that we could learn from, and maybe this podcast can be the beginning of something for us.
Yeah.
What else? So I'm reading this book. I just started it, so I can't tell you too much. It's called The Ecology of Commerce.
Okay.
And it was apparently one of the 1990s big books that really pushed the green movement, that started making some big business leaders pay attention. And this guy was an established author. He'd written 2 business books. He'd received, in the introduction, he says, I've received over 200 reviews for my books from Forbes, et cetera, et cetera. I wrote this book. I know the editor. They would not publish a review. I got 1 review of this book published when I released it. And I'm an established author. Because this book, The Ecology of Commerce, talks about how business pollutes, how business does, all these sorts of things.
Oh, fascinating.
Dude, couldn't even get him to review it and say it was wrong or we disagree with this. Would not publish it. All of the business publications just said, you don't exist.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible. And then it did go on to become a bestseller, and eventually it might have received the reviews, but he said, I got 1 review for this book after having had 200 in my career with 2 books prior to this. And that made me think a lot about the business model.
Corporations are weird, man. They have their own intelligence. And we talk about this a lot. There can be an organization with no evil people, but the corporation does evil things. It almost becomes sentient. Like these book publishers, they just have a sense that if this book comes out, it's going to slam them in some sense. Yeah. And they want to survive.
Book reviewers,
yeah.
Well, I think what it is that you have to understand the business model of Forbes and all these other people.
Yeah.
And they're advertiser-run businesses, and the people who are advertising on Forbes might be Procter & Gamble, might be these massive corporations, which may be called out by name in this book. And so even looking at the book and saying that it exists, is she having a hard time over here?
No, I don't know. She's just like, it's probably because I'm not telling her to lay down or something. She's worse than normal.
Yeah, she's eager.
You can just ignore her, though. It takes none of my mental energy to stiff arm her away.
Got it. I didn't know if you were having a hard time.
You have 100% of my focus. This is thoughtless. I can just kind of paw her away.
Got it. So, it made me think about the business model of different things and how they all have different goals. And so I was just curious. I was interested in how different business models of the things that I interact with have a predictable outcome. So if you're reading Forbes, expect to get a pro-business thing because they're an advertiser model and they're paid for by businesses that have their own interests in mind. And so I kind of went through it and I realized, because I was just curious how this is impacting my own life, that a ton of the anxiety, anger, fear, and we've talked about the news, is by design baked into the business model of a lot of the things that I consume. So I wrote, the biggest one is news. The benefit of me being anxious, fearful, or angry when I read the news is that I will A, click the title, which I find myself doing, and then B, tell everyone about it so that they click the title so that they get more eyeballs and more advertiser dollars. And it just goes, what is the benefit to the news if I read an article and go, interesting. That makes me feel content.
Yeah. And then, well, there was a study, right? People are very unlikely to share something that makes them happy, although they might share something that makes them feel, let's say, like motivated, but not as likely as if it makes them sad. And the number one thing they will share is if it makes them angry.
Yeah.
They've done studies on this. So if you want to go viral, the number one thing you can do is incense people. And ideally not at you, but at a target that isn't you.
Yeah.
That's your number one way to be viral. It's just to go, okay, I'm Ben. So the best thing I can do is make people really, really pissed at someone that's not Ben. And then everyone will share it in their rage, in their outrage.
That was in Trust Me, I'm Lying. If anybody's interested, it's by Ryan Holiday. And he worked in media and then talked about some of the biases that are built into the news filter. But it made me think of that. And then I was curious. I was like, okay, if I go to a massage, they want me to feel relaxed. It's like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I feel good when I go there. What does Facebook want from me? I think Facebook wants me to be bored and mindless is kind of what Facebook wants from me. And also close to my credit card. Like, what state of mind is it good when you're in Facebook? Is it good when you're highly engaged? I guess to a degree, but they kind of need you not thinking too much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think through this live. What they want is tiny attention-grabbing dopamine spikes, right? And then they want you to... So they don't want you to just watch one video. They want you to watch one video, but then want to keep scrolling.
And
that's
forever.
Facebook scroll. And I don't know what emotion creates that.
Dopamine is a good one, but also they switched, for instance, on Instagram. It used to be the chronological timeline.
Yeah.
And even for frequent viewers, when you hit the bottom, you knew and you were done. Now that they've mixed up the chronology, there's a sense that it goes forever, right? So they want the sense of perpetualness, the ever-loading newsfeed. Like you could just do it mindlessly forever and ever and ever. And so, and again, that
well, it's funny, when you open Instagram, you should know Instagram's goal is to keep you there forever now.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing people do a lot. They're like, oh, I'm just going to open up my phone while I'm going to the bathroom. This will be 2 minutes. And then 20 minutes later, it's like, dude, you went to the bathroom for 2 minutes, then you just sat on a toilet for 18 minutes.
It's so bad.
I think it's a really common experience.
Yeah.
And that's because that's what Instagram wants. It's not trying to make you happy. It's not trying to make you connected to your friends.
Yeah.
It's trying to make you stay on Instagram. That's Instagram's number one goal.
There's been times where, for whatever reason, I was having the hankering to look at my Instagram. And so I excused myself to go to the bathroom when I was with other people and then sat there for an extended period of time to get as much as I could before having to go back to socializing again.
I think it's fair to say if you've ever gone to the bathroom and your legs have fallen asleep, something's gone awry. That is not a standard human biology thing. If you just were phoneless, you'd be up before the tingles.
Well, they say you're supposed to squat.
Yeah.
That's I've heard. I don't want to claim knowledge where I don't, but people who are into physical fitness saying that you're supposed to have the squatty potty and it can cause like issues.
Have you ever tried it? It's a very weird experience.
It is.
It feels weird. Yeah, if you've never done it before, because it makes you put your legs up on
your knees get above your
you're
hip.
On like a step stool.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of sitting, you're giving birth almost. It's a very bizarre position. I'm sure it feels natural after time, but I don't own one. And so if I've ever been at a friend's house, I'm like, oh, I'll try this. And I'm like, maybe this is easier, but it feels really weird.
This feels highly uncomfortable. But yeah, so it and all of these things mirror my experience with all of these particular products, right? So I do feel relaxed in a spa, which is what they want. And I do feel anxious when I read the news or angry when I read the news.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you do go to Instagram or Reddit or something, what you feel is that you're coming out of a blackout.
Mindless blackouts,
we've all had it. You just go, oh my God, what? It's 1:20? It was 1 o'clock when I opened this.
And I think even there's, I was thinking about our own business, and the same operative principle is at work in our business. There's times where I've made videos that I think are more actionable, that have advice that is, if you applied this, better, but it's not as catchy or interesting, and it doesn't create that dopamine spike. And they're some of the lowest viewed videos that we have when they're like the most powerful if you would just do what I'm saying. And then our highest viewed videos sometimes have good advice. I try to put good advice in all of them, but the thing that makes them the highest viewed videos is that they feel like they could be interesting more than you do this and it'll instantly happen for you.
No, and I love when people come up to us and they're like, yo, your videos changed my life. Because of you, I have a person I'm dating or a raise or whatever. I love that. But when people come up to me and they go, yo, I love your videos. I binge watch 12 at a time. I also love that. So there is, even in my brain, it's like, I want this to help everyone, truly. But I'm also very happy when people just sit down for an hour and a half and only watch Charisma on Command videos. I'm like, oh, that also makes me happy. So I have the dual carrots.
And 12 Charisma on Command videos in a row is not better than one in terms of improving your life. In fact, I could argue that it's worse because instead of doing the thing and writing it down and implementing it, you turned it into entertainment. You turned it into the mindless thing, which I am incentivized to create, allow, and push. And YouTube pays me for it, right?
Yeah, the best thing you could do is watch no more than one a day. And then write down the action steps from the video and then do them for 1 to 7 days until you felt like it was a habit, and then go consume the next video.
Exactly.
When you had the first video handled.
Yeah.
But I would bet it's a very small minority of people that consume anything on YouTube like that.
Yeah, and this is the problem with everything that is an advertiser-driven platform, which is you, the consumer, become the product.
Yeah.
You are not the person who we are. You know, we all say, oh, the end user, try to serve them. It's like, no, you're the product which YouTube sells to advertisers. So capturing your attention is what we're there to do. In whatever way that person's morality deems possible, right? And the YouTube algorithm will then, of course, emphasize the ones that are the most effective, pretty much, well, somewhat irrespective of morality. They obviously have their own rules in terms of service, and you can't show beheadings and things like that.
But I interviewed a bunch of Charisma University students because I was trying to figure out what to create next. And funny enough, the two biggest benefits, no one said that the benefit of Charisma University is that the content was 10 times better than the free stuff. What people said was, one, actually investing money made them do it. Because when you watch YouTube, you're like, oh, I watch 12 YouTube videos for free. No incentive. But when they pay $600, they go, oh, I'm going to do this. And the second one is that it gives them an explicit schedule of do this today, do this today, do this today, do this today. And those are the two biggest benefits people got. Not the fact that it's this weirdly unique content itself, you know, which I think that kind of speaks to the fact that on YouTube, people aren't incentivized to do that. You know, these people are like stoked that they paid for something that makes them take action, which I think kind of tells you that when you aren't investing, you're not taking action. You're just consuming. Well,
beyond investing, it's also, I can't think of a single YouTube video where I say stop watching and do this. Yeah. I mean, like I say it at the end, but then the pop-up goes, watch next. You know what I mean? Subscribe, dude. Like all the calls to action.
No matter what you say, literally no matter what you say, as soon as the video ends, 16 videos are going to pop up.
Exactly. And there is one video that's the procrastination video where I like do a heartfelt plea to, okay, this is about procrastination. Go do your homework. Go do that thing. Go for a run, whatever it is.
Did that video get a lot of views?
No, because it can't.
YouTube will bury it.
Exactly. And that's, weirdly enough, telling people to stop watching, stop consuming, and start integrating is one of the most valuable things you can do, but it's not what the business model serves. So it just,
YouTube looks, if you watch a video all the way through to the end, give it a like, leave it a comment, and then exit YouTube, YouTube goes, don't show that to anyone.
Yes.
But it's great. It's got all 100% upvotes. Everybody loves it. Everybody watches to the very last minute, but then they exit.
Yeah.
Bury that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. And it's, I think businesses can be an amazing thing, but I increasingly, when I look at something, I'm asking what emotion is someone profiting from with this particular thing, right? And you can guess it if you step back, and then when you look at the news, you go, of course I'm angry. You know, of course this enrages me. Of course, you know, you go to the spa and you go, of course I feel relaxed, right? Like, depending on the business model, you can predict particular emotions, and it makes me think, and it makes me think how we want to structure our business models, because we certainly are somewhat advertiser driven on YouTube. It's not our main source of income. If it was, you would expect more of our content to push more towards the binge thing, which is or to disappear because it wasn't doing that effectively. Right now our business can run because we have Charisma University, which is the purchase thing, but yeah, just it makes me highly skeptical of anything that is advertiser driven, which includes TV, the internet, you know, all that kind of stuff.
You know, people really like that we're not advertiser driven. Sometimes we have videos that are like 9 minutes and 57 seconds. And we just don't slap on another 4 seconds. People are like, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, sometimes nobody cares. We get no.
No, people write in. They notice. I don't notice.
I want you to pack this podcast, Angel, full of 5 ads.
17 ads.
One every 6 minutes. We need an ad. But just, it's just something to consider. And we, on an individual level, can resist it to a degree, but recognizing that the overall business model has a powerful effect. So the best thing that we can do to shape our own contribution to what might be an immoral system is to restructure the system of how we earn money and all those sorts of things to try to make it more in line with stuff that's good for people.
You know, it is funny though. I know a couple YouTubers who are artists first rather than business people.
Yeah,
and they try really hard. I'm not going to have any ads. I'm not going to have any sponsors, and they end up not being able to produce as much content because they don't have any money, and inevitably they get this torn feeling of I can't afford an editor, I can't really afford anything nice equipment wise, and so my content is suffering. But I don't want to have to be part of this economic system.
Yeah.
And some of them choose to keep making art that not a lot of people see, and some people choose to run ads so they can actually create what people want. But it's a weird thing because what the fans of those people would like is more videos.
Yeah.
They're actually, I think, fine watching a 10-second ad. And that's a mental hurdle that these artists struggle with. I don't want to have any ads on my art. Okay, well, now you don't have an editor. You make a video once a month, and you're really stressed for money. And I don't have a right or wrong, but
it just makes me think at zooming out to the world, there's two ways that people think about changing the world. One is through revolution, which is where you upset the entire system. You do not play by the rules. And the other is by participating and getting elected or becoming a head of business. And then once you achieve power within a system, trying to change it. And there's drawbacks clearly to both of them.
I think the second one is tough because in order to rise to the top, you have to be in the system for 10 plus years and you get brainwashed. So by the time you get to the top, I think you've lost a lot of your revolutionary ideas. Even if you have innovative ideas, I think you lose your I'm going to overthrow the system. If you don't make it all the way to the top.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Then you can rise to middle manager. But yeah, in order to become the CEO, you almost have to get brainwashed by the organization.
Yeah, I can't. Very few CEOs out there go, now that I've made it to CEO position or chairman of the board, I'm going to shut this business down because what we do is unethical. Yeah. You imagine someone going and working at Philip Morris or something and hating cigarettes for 50 years.
Monsanto,
and
they're
finally
just a deep undercover agent.
Exactly. And so, by the time Noam Chomsky talks about this in Manufactured Consent, that there are these structural filters that stop you at your first promotion. You're not going to get promoted. You're not going to join the business. And by the time you've achieved the top, they didn't have to brainwash you. They just put a filter on that only a certain type of person could even squeeze through, right? There was also, I haven't pieced this thought together in my brain, so it might not make a ton of sense. I was reading another book by the guy who worked at he just put this out. Andreessen Horowitz. Is it Ben Horowitz?
I don't know who that is.
He's a VC guy, and he did a book on culture. And he talks about the Haitian slave revolution, which is really interesting because in all of history, if you look at slave revolts, there's only been one that was successful in the sense that it lasted and they created a country, basically, which was Haiti. And it was this guy who was a fairly well-educated slave. And he played within the system, honestly. And one of the biggest things, and I don't know if Ben Horowitz does the full historical breakdown, but this is his perspective on it, is that he comes up and he institutes all these rules that nobody you think in his position would ever do, which is, despite the fact that he's been a slave and all of his compatriots have been slaves, he stops people from taking vengeance. He explicitly says you cannot cheat on your wife so that he can stop people from raping and pillaging and looting and all those sorts of things because he doesn't want that. He incorporates the defeated soldiers into his own army, which you think is crazy. So now he's got like white generals that used to be slave owners that are his subordinates in this case. But through whatever force of character, luck, strategy, this worked out for a long time. Now, eventually, he was betrayed by one of his other friends, sent back to France, and died in jail. But the majority of the cause lived, and Haiti still had problems after that. But it was a successful slave revolution. So, it does make me wonder. Maybe it is coming up in the system, and
you want to overthrow YouTube by becoming YouTube's CEO?
No. I would. The system that I am talking about is the consumerist system. Is that dollars drive everything, right? Right. Wherever there is profit to me, you can predict how an organism or an organization will function. You just tell me your business model. I'll tell you how you operate. I don't need to know about your personal ethics because they don't matter as much as where you make money. And it seems like, okay, what can we do? We can try to completely disrupt the global economy and throw dollars out, or you can find a way to
make this more concrete because that's a little bit vague.
Sure. Okay, so the world has problems.
Mhm.
People, for instance, on YouTube are watching mindless content, and they're not engaging with the problems in a big way. And the problems that they do engage with on the news are these things that are sensationalist, entitled to make you angry, and all that sorts of things. How do you change that? On the one hand, you could advocate a spiritual revolution. Everybody meditate. Everybody get off YouTube, log off, disconnect, completely push that to the side, and we're going to start a whole new, brand new system based on meditation, spirituality, and sharing. That's the revolution. Or you could become a famous YouTuber, and you can advocate for degrees of change, which is like kind of what we do, right? We say, maybe don't use as much Instagram, or like maybe donate a little bit more to charity, or
only watch us.
Only watch us, right? And that is the tension that I think about sometimes when it comes to having an impact on the world. Ultimately, the best thing would be for people to not be in a state of anxiety and feeling unwhole because some ad is going to give them what they need when they buy Gucci or Jeep, and they watch my video, and then a Jeep ad comes on and they go, oh my God, I'd be so cool if I had that Jeep, which is not how I want them to feel, right? But here I am taking advertiser dollars from Jeep, which is contributing to that whole system. So I could opt out completely and go, I'm not going to participate, and then teach in a small room meditation for 10 people to learn how to disconnect from consumerist society. Or I could take Jeep's money, build a big YouTube channel, get a louder voice, but have a limited range of what I can say because I'm still part of this platform. What I can say effectively. I can say whatever I want, but it's not going to be persuasive given where it is. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have... You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
No, I agree. It's just like, that is a fact. Almost.
Well,
like
what do we do?
Fact.
Do we leave? Do we drop out?
No, I don't think so. Because then
we stay on.
No. Well, because people are still going to get on YouTube. So if you quit, then there's just more likely to watch something that's completely mindless.
Well,
that's what I mean?
That's the argument for working within the system, is make it better by degrees.
Yeah. I also think I find that YouTube can be extremely helpful if you're on there to learn.
Sure.
The problem is what you get on YouTube to do can get subverted by YouTube's intentions for you. So for instance, if I want to learn how to train my dog, YouTube's been the most valuable tool for me.
Yeah.
The problem is I'm trying to teach her how to heel when we go on a walk. If I watch a video on how to heel when we walk, and then the next one is about some trick that I have no interest in but looks cool, right? How to get her to jump off your back and catch a frisbee. And I watch that. Now my original good intention and the good 10 minutes I spent learning something gets subverted by this thing that's purely entertainment and actually makes me forget what I just watched.
Yeah.
So weirdly, it's YouTube could be blamed, but also my own attention span could be blamed, which they're trying aggressively to take advantage of. But that's kind of my fault too. If I just went on, searched something, blocked my homepage, watched one video, and then left, I'd be better off for it. It's not a purely destructive thing.
No, I'm glad you said that, because I probably just sounded like I'm a Luddite and I hate technology, and that's not at all how I feel at all. I'm glad that you said that there's tons of incredibly valuable things that come out of all of these platforms. So I'll leave it at that for now. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in. Did you have anything that you wanted to bring? I only have, I think, one more.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me get my phone out.
Well, I'll go while you prep your phone.
No, it's all good. I have the article pulled up right here.
Okay.
So I just thought this was interesting. I had a couple takeaways from this, but I don't know how I got to this. I literally have no idea how I got to this. But there's an article from a while ago. NASA gave spiders a bunch of drugs, and the webs they spun are amazing. And the very first experiment from 1948 was on caffeine.
I saw these.
And I'll send this to Angel, but take a look. The one on the left is a healthy spider, and the one on the right is a caffeinated spider. And it's a disaster, right? Angel, we'll have you pull this up on screen. And I thought that was so fascinating because caffeine is the drug of choice for the workplace, which is so interesting. And we can talk about the other stuff in the article, but I was just amazed how badly our own self-perception of our performance can miss. Because there's another study that James Clear is a friend of mine. He has a great blog. I recommend people check it out. And he talks about sleep deprivation. And they do a sleep deprivation study. And I've seen this in life. You're talking to someone who sleeps 4 hours a day, and you go, wow, how does that not affect your performance? You go, oh, I don't need it. I just don't need sleep. I'm a beast. I can crush it on 4 hours. And the sleep study shows that that's exactly what sleep deprived people feel as they bomb tests.
Yeah.
So they have people who are well rested take these objective tests, math, whatever it might be, pattern recognition. Then they sleep deprive them for a week, and they have them take a similar difficulty test that they have a control group take, and they score about the same thing. Their scores plummet. And they ask them afterwards, how do you think you did? And they're like, oh, fine. Thought that went great. It's like, you just bombed this and have no idea.
Yeah.
And this caffeine spider thing makes me realize coffee might be the same way. And I don't know, because obviously they're spiders.
Yeah, that was going to be what I was going to say.
No, but I mean, it's not hard for me to believe. I've seen people who are all jacked up on coffee, and they think they're fine, but their brain is scattered. They're incapable of doing one thing for a long period of time at a high level.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting because the whole workplace in the U.S. is highly caffeinated, and it might be a performance-destroying drug.
Sure. Well, I think I agree with your conclusion. I find the spider evidence wanting.
Yeah.
And for the reason that ketamine in a horse versus ketamine in a human.
The sleep study was done on humans.
Yes.
It wasn't done on mice.
But to your point of caffeine potentially hurting performance, I think that's very possible.
Except for athletic performance.
Especially, well, whether it does or doesn't, I think what you can probably fairly easily guess is that a limited amount of sleep plus caffeine in order to make up for it is not as good as just getting the same night's sleep, or like 8 hours of sleep to be well rested.
Especially not long term.
And
you
the
might
problem,
be able to pull it off for a week.
I actually bumped into a guy. It's funny you say this. The other day, he was saying, "Oh man, I was up late doing this thing last night, but I just got my first coffee, and here we go." And perhaps the ability to rely on coffee, to know that okay, in the morning, I can get coffee and I can make it through my day, hurts people, because if they didn't have that option, they go, "Oh well, it's time to go to bed, and I don't have a backup plan. My backup plan is be miserable at work tomorrow."
Yeah. By the way, I'm not here to point fingers. I'm literally running on espresso as we speak. And I knew I was going to bring this up on the podcast. So I'm not here to point fingers.
I never got into coffee.
I'm just here to share. You know what's funny? I never got into coffee in investment banking. Weirdly enough, I was sleeping from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. every day and just going, I'm not going to do caffeine.
Yeah.
I have no idea when I had my first coffee.
Probably in Brazil, because I lived in Costa Rica. Everyone there, we all moved to Brazil, and Henry would go down every day, and I bet you did the same.
I do purposely not have it every day, because a very good friend of mine in college was a caffeine addict.
Yeah.
And he would fill a 7-Up Slurpee-sized thing with coffee, basically. It's absolutely insane. It's like, what is this? This is 16 ounces. Probably 32 ounces of coffee.
Oh, my God.
Every morning. And that was how he operated. And then when I was working in private equity, a friend of mine would do 4 or 5 Red Bulls a day, every day. And we were like, this is going to kill you. This is not even coffee. This is poison. So he stopped and had horrible withdrawal.
Yeah.
Just like the shakes. He would sweat. He looked terrible. He lasted 3 days before he went back to Red Bull.
He went back.
He went, dude, I know this is going to give me a heart attack. That's not a joke, by the way. Our boss had a heart attack at 40. He's like, I know this is going to give me a heart attack, and I'm only 23 years old, but I cannot function without it. So even though I do now drink coffee, I make sure like 2 or 3 times a week, because I'm terrified of becoming a caffeine addict.
Yeah. Well, dude, so it's an interesting segue, because this book has a quote that it asks the price of what you get, right? So this guy is an investment banker. He's making a lot of money. And what he might calculate is, I put my time in, I get my money. But what he's not calculating is that if you didn't have this job, you wouldn't be addicted to Red Bull. Your health would last. So really, how much are you making when you subtract the later life costs, even just quantify them in terms of hospital visits?
Quality of life. Don't even worry about money. Money, you're going to come out ahead. But the fact that you're going to die at 60.
So there was I forget what it's called. It's Upton Sinclair had it. It's called like the suit trade-off. I forget exactly what it is. But it's the idea that you get this job, and it pays you a lot of money. And in order to maintain that job, you got to get a nice suit.
Yeah.
In order to, you got to get that suit tailored, and then you got to get the nice haircut, and then you got to get the nice shoes. And by the time you subtract what you have to put into that job, you're not out as far ahead as you thought you were. So this one guy, it's an older book. It was in the 90s. And this is for the average American, allegedly. These stats might not add up, but it's just an interesting consideration.
Yeah.
He says that the average American spends on their car working to pay for it, driving in it, maintaining it, 1,600 hours apparently a year, which is what it costs for them to maintain their car. And if you take the miles that they drive and you do the division, that averages out to a speed, if they were just to, instead of working on it, walk, bike, etc., they're moving at about 5 miles an hour.
I think this is probably no longer the case.
So the cost of cars might have gone down, but you're also...
It applies somewhere, you're saying.
You're not considering the average American. You're considering your friends who work at a higher hourly rate. Consider someone who makes a much lower hourly rate.
No, but how many hours does it say you work on a car a year? That's the part I'm struggling
Well, it's not
with.
work on 1,600 in driving it, to pay for it, to maintain it. So the big ones are driving it and paying for it. So again, the numbers may or may not be true. But the point is that nobody factors in what it costs to have the car, right? What it costs, and not just money, like in time.
Well, in LA, you do actually. I know a lot of people are like, I'm going to Uber so I don't have to find a parking spot.
Yeah.
Because that's a half hour, you know?
LA parking completely changes the calculus.
People really do.
Yeah.
They go, all right, yeah, are you going to drive or are you going to Uber? I'm going to Uber because I don't want to spend 20 minutes trying to find a parking spot.
Yeah.
So that math people are smart enough to get into.
And that particular math might not be true then or any longer now, but the question of what does your work take from you? And we often don't add it up or do the division and see, man, like if I just didn't want to have a BMW, I could cut 3 days a week off of my
Well,
job.
you and I, let's make, I think people might find this interesting. You and I just had this conversation, right? Because you're more of a truth-seeking, enlightened person. I'm a little bit more of a hedonist.
A little bit.
And we were talking about what our ideals are for work. And you're like, I want to focus much more on the podcast because I find it to be super intellectually stimulating. And I think it's a good area for growth. And Charisma on Command is doing well. And the only reason to focus on Charisma on Command is in an effort to grow the business so that you can accrue wealth. Now, that's why I want to work on the business. And you asked me, what do you do that makes you happy? Right? And I listed everything, and none of it is expensive, right? Surfing is free once you have a surfboard. Hanging out with friends, reading books, $8 a book, right?
Video games.
Once you have the PlayStation, though, it's like $60 for a game.
Every now and then.
Going on dates, which is free or one drink, you know? It's like, okay, why do you want more money? I go, because I'm scared that one day I'll need it. And you're like, well, are you really willing to work today doing things that you don't really enjoy, like marketing? They're not charisma related, right? So that you can make money, so that maybe in your 40s or 50s, if you need the money, you won't have to just go earn it then. And again, yes. And I think that's interesting because it's not even a unspoken thought. It's just a legit thought of like, I don't know why I need this, but there's a fear that I will need it one day. And I'm willing to do stuff I don't enjoy to get it.
Yeah.
Which is just fascinating because we're saying people might not realize it, but it's explicit and it's still there for me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm down for doing that. So.
Yeah. And after our conversation, I was like, as long as you sit here and you say yes to all of these things, and these are
the fact I think I think the interesting thing is that the answer is yes.
Yeah.
It's like, why is that answer yes? You know, maybe I need to see a therapist. But I think for a lot of people, there's just this sense. It's like we all know that. Well, not maybe we don't all know, but there's a study that says that after 70 grand, money doesn't make you any happier. If you make 30 grand and you can get up to 70, go for that.
Yeah.
That's going to be a stress relieving experience for you.
And also dependent upon the city that you live in, right? So this is a gross average. If you live in New York City and you're in Manhattan,
maybe
it can be
85.
higher than that. Yeah.
But that study, which now we all know, is
also a family unrelated, right? That's a single person. If you have a family, it can be different. But go ahead.
But so you're a single person and you do make 75 grand a year. You should put no effort into making more money. But I think a lot of people do have this sense of, what if I need more later? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm projecting. It's not for me about buying a boat. It's this fear of a medical emergency, a child in 10 years, whatever it might be. And then there's this willingness to sacrifice a little bit today out of this vague fear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting.
Well, and it's also interesting that if it were, let's put it this way, a purely rational fear, you would expect to find it evenly distributed amongst the population. But
or it would have a number. It would have a number tied to it. That fear would be assuaged
by a certain number.
At 100 grand a year.
Yes. And it's not. And it's
no, if you make 50, that fear you think is going to be assuaged at 70. And if you make 70, you think at 90. And if you make 90, then at 120, surely you wouldn't stress anymore.
And so this is the Tony Robbins quote that I think I most hate, which is, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And
well, you know my response.
Yeah.
Even if you're growing, you're dying.
You're dying. And there's this, both in the system as a whole, which is the system of capitalism, and in our own individual lives, which fuels the system, there is a belief that never-ending growth, especially even financially, is desirable. Now, there's a huge swath of the world and Americans for whom, and this is important, growth is going to make a significant difference. It's going to put food on your table, shelter over your head. If your tire blows up, you can replace it on your car and get to work, right? I'm not trying to say anything for that.
No, and they know the number. On average, 70 grand.
But yeah, once you get beyond that on a per person thing, depending on your city, I don't see the growth impetus slow. And if anything, I see it speed up relative, because the numbers, once you have a certain amount of money and you've learned how to run a business, it can become even easier to grow it by 10%, 15%, 20%. And it doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. It never goes away. And I think often that what's something that just grows. It's not people. Can you imagine if your height just grew forever?
Yeah.
You would die. The only thing that grows uninhibited is cancer.
And then it doesn't. That's
and
the
then
thing.
It kills you.
Cancer looks like Ninja. It grows a lot, but then you die, and then the cancer has to die because it runs out of food. Ninja's Twitch stream and cancer have the same growth trajectory.
And yeah, I don't know why people, and I would like to talk to Tony, and he might say, well, I don't mean it financially, I might mean in some aspect of your life, but I do think there's something to be said for going, I no longer need to grow. I am ready to, for at least a period of time, plateau and be and appreciate and express gratitude for the things that I have worked for and where I am now. But it's so it just doesn't happen, man.
Yeah.
It seriously takes a lot of personal control and training to even get there for a few moments a day.
Yeah. I also thought that conversation was interesting. It's interesting what different people like and dislike. Mm-hmm. I thought that was interesting because for you had said that you don't like when you're working on something that's not challenging or that's not challenging your mind, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, I really don't mind that at times. What I don't like are deadlines.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because obviously our entire behavior and decision making and plans for the business and for ourselves are really at the end of the day informed by just a few things that bug us.
Yeah.
When you are doing something that bores you, it bugs you.
Mm-hmm.
And so your entire plan for Charisma on Command and your life is designed to avoid boring work. Mm-hmm. And I don't like deadlines. So my entire plan for the business and life and all of my actions are informed by the fact that I'm willing to do something that's uninteresting if I can do it at my leisure.
Yeah.
And so, that's really, I think, a useful thing to know. And I hadn't nailed that down until we talked about it yesterday. So for everyone, I think knowing what creates unhappiness in your life is a really valuable tool. Because if I took you're smart. I admire you in a lot of ways.
Thank you, Ben.
It's true.
I admire you too.
If I tried to use your decision-making rules for myself, I'd be miserable.
Yeah.
I'd be doing really interesting work on weekly deadlines, and I'd hate myself.
And you'd be stressed. Yeah.
And if you did happen to admire parts of my life or my work ethic or whatever and go, I'm going to try to be like Ben and make decisions like Ben, you would be leisurely bored and miserable for the entire time you're doing it.
Yeah.
So I think it's something no one really ever tells you that in school. They say, play to your strengths.
Yeah.
No one ever says, figure out what makes you miserable and avoid
don't
that.
do that thing.
You know?
Yeah.
And I did 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 4 years in the workplace before starting this business. And not one person in those 12 years said, you should probably codify what makes you the most miserable.
You know what's funny is some of my biggest happiness breakthroughs in life, certainly I'm learning, a lot of them are internal. A lot of them are perspective shifts. But a lot of them are removing the negative. It was not having to wake up to an alarm was huge. Not having to put on a suit was huge. Various friends of mine have dated women that I did not get along with. And when they broke up, that was huge, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure whoever those guys are, they're sorry. I speak for them, although I am surely not them. But they're sorry.
So you actually made me think of something. This is a personal. We've been very up in the philosophical. You'd mentioned earlier that people think we're the same, and it might be fun to just go through the ways in which you and I are not the same.
Sure.
So the one that occurs to me, and I thought about this the other day, is that
Blue eyes versus brown.
you are about 40 pounds more muscle than I have.
No, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that you can work at a stretch so long on the same thing, and I quit. I take breaks. I walk away. You did investment banking, which in my understanding was a high level of attention to detail for hour-long stretches at a time, day in and day out, and I would not have made it a day. Yeah. I couldn't have done that. Not only even if my will was there, my attention span breaks, and I lose the details so quickly.
Yeah. No, and weirdly enough, I actually was happy, even though I hated my job.
Yeah.
I think that's my superpower. I can spend 8 hours a day doing something I hate, but weirdly think I have a good life.
Yeah. Another thing, and I haven't thought of these beforehand, but this is just having known you. You are willing to take intense short-term pain for extended long-term results.
Yeah.
So like the training to be an MMA fighter. You're like, for the rest of my life, I will be a 1-0 fighter if I do this horrible experience of fight camp and cutting and then having to potentially get punched in the face.
Yeah. Sounds more impressive if you just say undefeated, though.
Undefeated
cage fighter. We don't have to say it was.
You'll have done it. And with all these things, we even do hypothetical, like, would you do X, Y, or Z? And you're like, oh, it's only 6 weeks of agonizing pain, and then afterwards I'm better in some way?
Yeah.
I would do it. And I run from pain.
Yeah.
I do not stomach physical pain at all. And so if something hurts, I'm just like, I'm out. I tap. I'd rather suffer in a low order way for the rest of my life than do this physically painful thing.
Yeah. I think it's because my dad's a hockey player.
Yeah.
Seriously. No pain, no gain. It was like a real thing. It wasn't said facetiously.
Yeah. What else? Any other ones come to your mind?
Yeah. Well, something I had to actually, I guess, own. I think knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses is really important, especially when you're business partners. I think we're similarly intelligent. And so for a while, I was like, oh, yeah, same strengths, same weaknesses. And this happened this week. I was like, wow, I'm much more of a follow the instructions kind of person. And you think so much more out of the box. And so we're trying to figure out who should do what. And we were like, who should focus on the podcast? And it's so obviously you, because you are creative. You can look at something besides how did other podcasts grow and implement them on our business. You can take something you see in, not that you would, but like your dad's chemical company or box company and apply it to us. And if I had to grow the podcast, the best thing we could do is find a world-class course on it that had step-by-step instructions, and I would do every single step, and I would probably do it at an A level.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do anything that wasn't in the course. And weirdly enough, we've worked together for 6 or 7 years. That's the first time I had that realization.
It's funny because, I haven't thought about it intensely, but if you look at, you went to one of the best schools in the country and then transferred to the best business school in the country, which is Wharton. And then you got the #1 firm afterwards coming out. And you when handed the rubric and the things to get there, you're like, okay, I will choose the highest, hardest path and just tell me what to do, and you will execute on that. And I went to the school that gave me a scholarship, and then I studied philosophy, and then I studied business, and then I went to Costa Rica, and then I went to Spain.
And predictably, when we both moved to Brazil and had no income, I was the one that had a breakdown because I had no rubric. And you were like, "This is fine, dude. I'm going to the beach." It's like we make no money. You're like, "Okay, I'm going to the beach," and I was like sitting in our Airbnb. Panicked. And that's predictable in hindsight.
The other thing which relates to our business is you are definitely more social than I am. We've talked about this. You're extroverted. I'm more introverted, and it works for our business because I have to learn a lot of the things that I wind up teaching, right? But you text friends, happy birthdays, what are you up to? Let's get lunch. And because I know you, I go to some of these things. But if you were to just disappear, not because I don't love them and not because I'm not happy when they're there, my contact with other people would just plummet.
Just be your brother and your dogs.
It would be people who are physically present in my life. I do not reach out in the same way that you do, which is why, and I think we've been talking about business strengths. We're talking about moving you to a networking only position. which
Well,
is
it's interesting. I mean, I think this is a good question for everyone, and it's kind of advice that people have said before. But we have been asking, what is the biggest lever in our business? Which I think other people can. I'm trying to make this applicable to other people besides us. It's a fun conversation for me, but it's like what we had been thinking is, okay, what's the number one thing that would grow the business if someone did it?
Yeah.
And then we've been putting me on that because you've been doing content creation, at a world-class level. The thing is, I'm not world-class at the things we've been putting me on. And so what we're getting is mediocre results in high leverage situations. That's not always bad. But I think for the first time in like 2 years, we asked, what would Ben be equivalently good at as Charlie is at YouTube? And what if he did that? And even if it's not the highest leverage thing on paper, what if his goal was to go befriend brilliant people who could maybe one day be helpful? And maybe it won't work. Maybe in a year we'll get on the podcast and we'll go, that was a stupid idea.
A lot of cool friends, guys.
Ben should have been focused on YouTube ads.
Yeah.
But I do think it's an interesting question that other people could ask too. And I think there's a phase in everyone's life where things make sense.
Yeah.
We talked about this in your 20s, focusing on making more money, being in better shape, getting better with people makes total sense. And then maybe later in life, you focus on the internal. I think similarly, at first, I wouldn't play to your strengths because you don't know what your strengths are. Charisma was not a strength of mine at 19.
Yeah.
I've made it a strength and I love it. And now I can have interactions with people that go well and it's fun for me. But I do think at some point, and 32 seems like a good enough time to do it, you go, okay, let's assume, even though this isn't true, that these are your strengths and weaknesses now.
Yeah.
So you spent your 20s building skill sets and discovering what you like. That was your exploratory phase. Now in your 30s, pretend that that's set in stone and play to your strengths. And I actually think we'll see, but that seems like a good way to do it. And it marries, we always talk about truisms.
Yeah.
Are always different. Like look before you leap.
How do they tie
Fortune
together?
favors the bold.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard this, play to your strengths. But in my own life, I've seen all of my success comes from being interested in charisma while being uncharismatic.
Yeah.
So maybe the answer is that for a period of time, don't focus on your strengths, focus on what you want to be strong at. And then at some point go, okay, now that you have strengths you like, focus on those. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe that's how those truisms.
As long as that phase ends, because it's not 30s to the end of time. It's at some point go, okay, pretend again that you're completely malleable and can learn other things. That way you're not done at 30. But the other thing that I do think bridges those is do what you're interested in.
Yeah.
Because that you will do well. If you are, and I've a lot of our friends have started business, and what has worked, what hasn't. An ability to stick with it and persistence is weirdly enough highly predictive in our small friend group of success.
Yeah, that's the only reason I think this podcast might be successful is because you're interested.
Because I care.
In it.
Yeah.
If you were like, I'm doing this because I think it's a good business idea, but it bores me, I'd say we should shut it down. I think the only thing that might make it successful is the fact that you're really intelligent and you like it.
No, thank you. I feel so flattered today.
No, I'm just saying it's true. Like if neither of us had an interest in podcasting, we should shut this down because a podcast is not an innovative, new, brilliant idea. There's 100,000 of them. It's only going to be successful if it's fun and interesting and you like spending your free time thinking about it.
So I actually looked at our demographics because I'm interested in this stuff, and we have a lot of 18 to 24, and then 24 to 30 some is our biggest thing. So these people are in that, most of whom are in that first phase. And so what I would recommend if you are in that first phase is this: what are you interested in? Now you can draw a Venn diagram of what is there a need for, what are other people interested in, and how can I relate if I'm personally interested in something that I don't know. I see that you have a fruit tray. I like to count the numbers of fruit in fruit trays, and people just do not care about that.
Yeah.
Write more interest out until you find something that has some overlap. But having seen my friends who sometimes just try to get rich quick, not necessarily in an unethical way, just looking for, okay, what's the business model that's gonna break through this year? It's not dictated it.
Oh, this makes me think of a something that will be useful to the people who want to be entrepreneurs. I think that's not a small part of our audience, people who want to start businesses. Most of the people I see that are successful don't make a ton of money in the early years, but they are willing to keep doing it because they're either super passionate about the idea or they like the work. If I think of the people who have tried to buy basically get rich quick scheme advice, they go to, I'm going to import things from China that I don't care about to try to make money on this arbitrage margin of buying for cheap, selling for more expensive on Amazon or whatever. They run into hiccups and then they just want to shut it down because it's not fun. Mm-hmm. But I think of all the people that are successful and they were willing to keep going despite the fact that it wasn't immediately making them rich. So even if your only goal is money, I would say find an interest outside of money to help you make that money. Because
even if it's a product from China that you like, that you're passionate, that you want to get.
No, I know a guy who makes a ton of money selling ghillie suits.
Yeah.
No one would have thought that's like a brilliant thing. He just likes ghillie suits and he makes a lot of money. But the people who just buy whatever's trending, they don't necessarily do more than make money for a couple months. So weirdly enough, I thought there was this thing of, do you pursue a passion or do you try to pursue a more sound economic decision? And I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, they're the same thing. You have to pursue a passion, because I don't know anyone who's successful doing something that they're completely disinterested in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And if you guys are interested, we can do a longer episode. We shot one, but we didn't. We realized we didn't know where you all were coming from with your interest in Charisma on Command as a business. So if you're interested in this topic of the story of Charisma on Command business advice, we've been doing this for 6-7 years. We have learned a ton. If it's of interest to you, say so in the comments. And let us know whatever particular questions that you have, because it's 7 years. We could talk in 100 different angles about this.
Do you want to make it mostly question? I think that actually would be the most interesting. Just mostly question driven.
Perhaps rather than just telling the story.
Yeah, exactly. So rather than us guess what's interesting, I would say just if you have any question about Charisma on Command, the business or the story or the last 7 years.
Mindsets,
all of it. Why Brazil, whatever it is. Write that under this episode in the comments, and we'll try to accrue those. And Angel, try to put them in like a chronology so we're not bouncing all over the place. So whoever asks about
early life,
how we came up with our first business idea, that would be the first question. And then if someone has a question about the last 6 months or going forward, we'll do that last.
Sure.
That way it's at least interesting to people, because I mean, it's 7 years of our lives. We could talk forever, and I want to make it something people want to hear.
One last thing to consider. So we've talked about Venn diagrams a bit. You've got your interests, which are critical. And then you've got market need, which is, I would say, also critical to a successful business. The last one that I would consider, as I've sort of really reviewed just my small circle to see what has worked, has been industry. Because there are people that have worked hard on something that they're really interested in, that the market needed, but what they didn't account for is that the writing was on the wall that this particular industry was not going to exist in 5 or 10 years. And if you are in, they say a rising tide raises all boats. If you're in an ocean that's about to hit the bedrock, there's nothing you can do if you're in the wrong industry. So those would be probably the 3 most important checks for any business idea that I would start to run. Then, of course, pre-sell it and all that kind of stuff. We can talk in the business episode. But that's that. So there's one other thing that I wanted to touch on.
All right. I have a dentist appointment in 25 minutes. So we have a hard stop around then, just as a warning.
Got it. Sorry, everyone. Ben has to go to the dentist.
When I made this appointment 3 months ago or whatever, we didn't have Thursday podcasts. So going forward, this won't happen.
So this one, and if you're not interested, you just tell me. It's also from this book. It's called The Ecology of Commerce. I'm only 10-20% in. But this book was written in the 90s. And I bought it because I'm interested in the environment and the effects of business on the environment while it happens. But I see that there's a problem in a lot of literature on the environment, is that when you make a prediction in 1990 about what's going to happen 30 to 50 years from now, and it doesn't come true, you lose credibility, which is not good. And I would advise anyone who's in this field to be very cautious of predictions, because I am someone who is interested in this. And there were when we're going to run out of oil was one of them. This was in grade school. We were supposed to run out of oil at a certain point, and we have not, as we approach that point, come anywhere close to hitting that. Now it's in another 30 or 50 years.
It's because people underestimate technology, right? They think technology is going to be linear, but it's always exponential.
Yes, I think there's a lot of reasons that go into why anyone would do that. But yeah, this is Thomas Malthus in the 1700s said that we're running out of grazing land for the cattle. We'll never have enough. People are going to starve to death, and technology can account for that. Now, this Malthusian defense is often to say, hey, the earth is infinite. Don't worry. We always solve problems. We're always going to figure it out. And I don't necessarily think that's true either. I think that what we kind of have on planet Earth as I'm reading this book is a huge mansion that was built so far before we ever came into it. And it's got all these different rooms. And we're just going through one room and we mess it up. Whatever, there's another room. We just go mess that room up. And there's more rooms than we'd ever thought possible. But it's not infinite.
Yeah.
And I think that is a stronger point to make, which is this is your home. You would not trash your home and then just have a section of your home which is, just trash all the time. You take out the trash, you put it somewhere else, you do something with it, you clean up after yourself. For me, that is the environmental message that seems to be more philosophically sound than any of these particular predictions, which the ozone was a huge thing when we were growing up and it can't be recovered. And now we're seeing that the ozone is starting to come back.
Yeah.
And I think it hurts well-intentioned people when they're trying to persuade people who are unsure.
Yeah. I agree with you. I will defend environmentalists a little bit. The ozone is only coming back because certain things were banned by governments.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of cool.
That's great.
Because you go, okay, we had this problem. It was going to be a huge problem. Governments got together. They banned certain chemicals and things from being released into the world.
Aerosol stuff, yeah.
And now it's repairing itself.
That is a
phenomenal.
great point.
Yeah.
That is a great point. And not to be discounted, which is changes were made because there was this people cared enough and they were potentially afraid of a cataclysmic thing, and then they changed their behavior and things got better. But I'm not far enough into the book to comment much more on that. But just some of the early predictive things from the 90s, I was like, oh man, this hasn't panned out. And and as someone who's interested, you're losing me in chapter 1. Don't do that to me.
I read a branding book that was written right when the internet came out, and it's
gosh.
so wrong in so many ways. It's like Starbucks' success is because they only focus on coffee.
Yeah.
While every other coffee shop is foolishly selling breakfast foods.
Yeah.
They focus on excellence in one area, and so should you. And I'm like, okay, but it's 2019 now, and it's 29 years later, and Starbucks sells everything.
Have you ever heard of Disney?
They sell beer.
This was the 21 laws of branding or 22 immutable laws of branding. Is that the one? So they talk about, this has always bothered me, and because I believed him for a long time.
Branding or marketing?
Either one. They talk about the law of product extension.
Got it.
Right? And they say, if you make Harley Davidsons, you got to make Harley Davidsons. You got to do this. You got to do this. That is not what Pokemon, right? Yeah, but they made it Pokemon, but then they made a Pokemon keychain, then they made a Pokemon this, then they made a Pokemon app, then they made a Pokemon movie, Pokemon, like, you can do everything.
Sure.
Harley Davidson t-shirts, Harley Davidson tattoos, Harley Davidson. They were wrong about the product extension thing. Disney perhaps being the best example of a company that is in everything, and they put their name on just about everything that they do. So this is a technical business complaint, but I feel gypped by that particular law.
It's always, there's no real takeaway except for it's funny when somebody codifies their prediction for 30 years down the road.
I respect when they do that, though. I wish, I really want, you said your buddy wanted to make accountability.com, which would take pundit predictions from everything from sports to the climate to news to politics, and it would let everybody have a track record of what they predicted, who would win the election, who would win the game. And you could see, and this would be amazing, and I would love this for myself and others, to really check how often anyone's predictions come true. And if there are a handful of people that are on there that rise to the top, they absolutely ought to be paid more attention to, or at least given greater scrutiny than the rest of us.
But like we talked about,
myself.
people just like to be enraged. There's sports personalities that are specifically famous because people don't like them.
Yeah.
And so they put them on these talk shows where it's someone that's more relatable, more like the audience, and then someone that's just kind of a dick or takes outlandish hot takes.
Yeah.
And people will watch it and then hit up Twitter and social media being like, I can't believe he said this. And that actually, weirdly enough, guarantees that person a job.
Yeah.
You, by sharing how much you hate them, you've given them a raise.
One thing that I tried to do is I kept a prediction spreadsheet, and it is illuminating because I'm wrong so often. And it makes me limit my predictions, but it does make me make better predictions. I have gotten better at them over time.
Yeah, one thing I really like that I've started doing internally that helps. We're not great at future predicting as humans because we're very emotional. Mm-hmm. You started a habit of whenever someone would say something like, oh, dude, my business is going to double, or like, oh, we're going to be together for sure at the end of the year, or like, oh no, we're going to break up this month, things aren't good. You just think, and if you disagree, you go, do you want to bet? And you watch people walk it back, like, oh man, things are really tough with the girlfriend, like I don't think we'll make it out the week, but this is someone whose relationship just always goes up and down. You go, I'll put $1,000 on it. No, I'll put $50 on it. And you watch them, they have to get out of that emotional state of thinking of panic. The sky is falling. We're going to break up because I'm feeling sad.
Yeah.
And they have to go into the rational because money's on the line. They go, do I actually think we're going to break up? No. Not even close. Not enough to put $50 on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating. And I've started actually asking myself that same question before I speak. So I was talking to your brother about something and I was about to say, dude, it's never going to happen. And I went, if I had to put money on it, I actually would bet that I fold on this and I end up doing this thing. And so I didn't. And I think that's really useful for everyone as a way to bring yourself back to reality and get a little less emotionally frazzled about your future predictions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is an Nassim Taleb rule. I think one of the best that he's done, which is skin in the game. You need to demand that your consultants, pundits, whatever, have skin in the game. And money is one way to get it because talk is cheap. And like you said, as soon as people are asked to put up any money, you see a complete shift in their decision-making criteria.
And what I'm saying is you can unfrazzle yourself.
Yeah.
If you're in a bad spot with something or you feel like you're emotional or you're trying to take a guess on your relationship or your job or you're this and you're that, instead of thinking in that sky's falling way, think to yourself, okay, what would I bet on? You know? And if a friend of yours is panicking about something, oh my God, remember we were at a spa and this woman had accidentally sent an email to her boss that included the word because she meant to send, sorry, Angela, you got to bleep that. She meant to send it to a friend and she sent it to her boss. She goes, I'm going to get fired. And she was panicking. And if she were a closer friend of mine, I go, I'll bet you $1,000 you don't get fired.
Yeah.
And she'd know she's not going to get fired, but it would snap her out of that panic.
And
she could actually live her day
Yeah.
without being stressed instead of being stressed for 2 days before finding out, you're not getting fired.
Yeah, you can help people, in short, when they're in panicked emotional states by forcing them back to this more rational consideration.
Yeah.
But let's do a question or two before you got to run to your dentist.
Sure.
This one's kind of long, but I like it, so stick with it. It comes from Sarah.
Angel goes so rogue. I love it.
What do you mean? Sorry.
Just you got it.
Some people were nice to me in the comments. I got a big head. Sorry. So Sarah asks, we often hear Charlie and Ben referring to their evolution of thinking around subjects or ways of interacting with the world. In this last episode, it came up a few times, like Charlie's interpretation of the corporation or Ben's sarcasm. I'm wondering how you guys reconcile your changing opinions given the amount of recorded content that people are still sourcing. This week, I've had a handful of people repeat back to me something I said that left a strong impression on them from some years ago. While their feedback was that the impacts were positive, hearing that my old opinions are still in heavy rotation left me feeling uncomfortable. Not sure if it's because of the self-consciousness around what sort of wake I cut, or if it's more about the version of me that is trapped in people's minds. Do you ever have mixed feelings about how your old advice and opinions are circulating? If so, how do I make peace with it?
100%. I mean, so I'm more recorded than you. I would dare say.
Oh yeah, my only regret is not wearing a mask on this podcast.
So I am 100% certain that there are videos out there that I would no longer agree with, or I would think told half of the story and that there was an important part that I left out. One of the biggest ones that comes to mind is I used to think that relationships were everything. And I said it often, and I believed it, and I thought that was going to be true forever. And the biggest change in the last 3 years is that I go, only if we include the relationship with yourself.
That's what I was gonna say.
In that. Because for me, it was all about connecting to people and who you know and your potential wife or husband, boss, etc. And I feel so much more that it's the internal. So I struggle with this. Now, I will admit that I am tempted, like you probably, to take ownership over everything that people get valuable from me 2 years ago, me 3 years ago. And certainly I do receive financial royalties from all of these things. But from a philosophical perspective, if I want to be able to be honest and dissociate myself from the things which I don't agree with, I have to also recognize that I'm not the person who said all of those things that people like anymore. So from a philosophical perspective, weirdly enough, that's not me. That person is gone and dead. And if you really want to hone in, the person who started the sentence is gone and dead. So from a spiritual perspective, try to stay in the now. From a practical perspective, any more than a few months ago, it's highly likely that I would do it different, stand in a different opinion. And that doesn't mean that I'm right today. It just means that I have to recognize that this persisting idea of an identity of a Charlie Houpert that was the same then that he is now, despite the fact that all my cells, ideas, many things have been recycled and changed, is just not the case. And so I don't deserve all of the praise, and for mistakes that I've made, I deserve forgiveness is kind of my feeling. Do you have any?
No, I mean, it's definitely something I think about. Certainly on a personal level, I'm very comfortable with the fact that I've changed. Like, I don't feel any personal angst about that. I actually like that. That's growth, right? Mm-hmm. Now the question is, can somebody find something that I say today 10 years from now that I disagree with and then bring it up in a scandal and make me look bad? Probably. When I'm 42?
Yeah.
Sure. What do you do about that? I don't have a great answer.
Sure.
I think all I can do is try to be true to myself today. That's the one thing, is I don't want to go down for something that I don't even believe now.
Yeah.
And so there's this, I don't even know what to call it, this philosophical belief that, all right, if I'm going to go down for something, I'll try to believe what I'm saying,
At
and
least
so
at
I can,
the moment that
so
I
I
say
can
it, yeah.
censor myself from saying crazy inflammatory things. But whatever I do say, I want to believe. I don't want to try to give the right answer, because that would suck, to go down for something you didn't even believe because you were trying to present a certain persona.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's literally the only defense I've come up with. And then what I think will happen when I'm 42 or tomorrow or whenever this happens is I'll just go, yeah, at that age, I thought that was a good thing to say, and it was meant to be helpful. And I do always come from a place of trying to be helpful and thoughtful. I like to think that I have good values. And so to the extent that I look back in time and regret something, it was a mistake. It was like a well-intentioned whoopsie.
Yeah.
And so it's going to suck, I'm sure, but that's all I can do, I think. It's just be like, all right, try to believe what you say now. And then if 10 years from now you regret it, at least you can go, yeah, it was a different time in my life.
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple things that I think about. One is that I do try to come to these podcasts where I know that we're talking off the cuff in a calm mood.
Yeah.
So like I might be angry before I come on here, and I could be immortalized as an angry hot take, and it's gonna happen, right? With these podcasts, you're gonna catch me.
Oh yeah, I'll say something that'll incense you.
I've already been frustrated by, there's a New York Times article that I think I went too hard at that doesn't represent the entirety of my feelings on it. And sometimes you check me and go, technology is good too. And I go, yes, thank you. Because that also represents what I think.
Yeah.
But what that makes me realize, and part of the issue is that the ego wants to identify with anything that builds it up. And so we like to take credit for our past accomplishments. We're so eager to be, I'm the guy who did that. I'm the girl who did that. Ben won his cage fight, and, I made these videos that are helpful to people. But the flip side of that, because of course that's not true, you are no longer that person, is that when you're confronted with something that you don't agree with or that you did was bad and you want absolution, forgiveness, or to have moved on past that. So what I try to recognize, particularly online, is that no one knows me. No one knows all facets of my life, or even critical facets of my life. What it is like when the camera is turned off, right? I am not exactly the same as I am on camera. I swear, for instance, far more. I'm more likely to give a hot take than I am when I'm on camera. This is a facet of my personality. So what I try to recognize is that in both praise and in criticism, it is a facet of me. It is a piece of me, but it is not me in my entirety. Plus, it's a piece of me filtered through that other person's lens. So I have been divorcing myself in an increasing way from the flattery and the praise that I get, especially from people on the internet, as well as some of the criticisms. That said, I do try to take criticisms of ideas that I may still hold seriously and incorporate them and challenge my own ideas so that they may change. But personal statements, man, the person Charlie from last year he's gone, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Cool. Identity is an illusion. What else do we have?
We have another question from Kai. He asks, why do I focus so much on the people who dislike me and the negative interactions I have when meeting new people? I focus so much on bad interactions that it makes me internalize a lot. Any advice?
Well, the reason... Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just... On that last thought, I was going to say, it was a fantastic question. If we had more time, you didn't have to go. It makes me think of the jail system that we have, which obviously has a lot of things that you want to do. You want to put dangerous people in jail, but you wind up with people who were 19 when they committed a horrendous crime being 49, right? 30 years later. And who are you punishing at this point? That person is gone, right? So there's the idea that identity is not as static as we would like it to be has a lot of implications for how we might run some of our systems. But
that was for the last question.
That was for the last question.
Yeah. So for this, I mean, the first thing I'd say, you ask, why do you focus on the negative? Don't beat yourself up. That's how humans are programmed.
Yeah.
So I think, unless my complete understanding of how human psyche evolved is off, that's because we used to have tribes. And when you had a 20-person tribe, if 3 people hated you, they might kill you in your sleep, or they might kick you out of the tribe, and then you can't survive. So don't beat yourself up. That's human nature, I think, to focus on the people that don't like you, at least until you build the muscle of doing something different. So where you're at today is totally reasonable, and it doesn't mean that you're screwed up. That said, I think you can work on adjusting to the new world. But yeah, you're not in a bad place. So that's the first thing I'd say about that.
And just to check, was this question, I did because I was thinking of my other answer. Is this one about particularly online or in person, did they say?
I think it's in person.
It doesn't say specifically, but I think in person because it does say when I'm interacting with people or when I meet new people.
Got it. Yeah. So first thing is that I think there's a biological proclivity towards focusing on the negative. The oft given example is that we see if there's wind rustling in the bushes, we go, okay, that's probably a lion, right? If somebody doesn't like us, we go, it's probably the worst case scenario, so that we can address the threats to our livelihood. That's built into us. Then on top of that, there's a layer of personal history, which is you might have parental things that this reflects a scenario early in your life where you knew that you were a bad boy, right? Or a bad girl. And you are prone to recognize that because it was a message that was given to you when you were little, and you're looking in a confirmation bias style to find that sort of thing. So you're not going to unhuman yourself, but what you might do is unravel that second piece. And you can do this in a number of ways. You can do therapy. We have our course, Emotional Mastery. We rarely talk about it because we don't get a lot of questions like this. But if you're interested, we'll put a link to Emotional Mastery or the email list wherever we sell it. But that's about unraveling childhood beliefs and experiences. In terms of what you can do today, Ben's point, don't beat yourself up on top of the beating yourself up that you're doing for this. It's completely, totally normal. The one exercise from Emotional Mastery which you can do that I would recommend just trying is the if-then exercise. So it looks briefly, because I know you got to go, like this. You write down the chain of if-then events that are causing you to feel this particular way. So you go, okay, if this person says that they don't like me, then they won't hang out with me. You know, if they don't hang out with me, then everyone else will see them not hanging out with me and think I'm a loser. If everyone thinks that I'm a loser, then I will be alone. If I am alone, then I will be unhappy. Whatever it is, it'll look something like that. And you wind up at the bottom, you wind up with an emotion. And then you go and you ask to every piece of that, is it true? How might it not be true? And what you'll find is that maybe 1 or 2 of these leaps are true, but the vast majority are not. And you find flaws at every single level in the implicit argument that you're building against yourself. And it's a cognitive behavioral therapy technique. It helps to sort of take the sting out of some of these negative experiences. And I would recommend that.
Yeah. And one other thing I'd say, I think, theme of the podcast a little bit is this idea that when you codify things or snap yourself out of emotional states, you realize that reality isn't quite what your emotional beliefs are. So if you're struggling because this particular person is making you feel a certain way, I think that exercise is awesome. If in general you're just feeling badly because you're like, oh, I'm uncharismatic, I'm a loser, no one likes me, I would say you can codify every interaction you had that day, because you might be thinking about this one person who doesn't like you and going, oh, sorry, Angel. And what you might do is like, okay, I woke up and I talked to a barista and she was neutral to positive. And then I talked to my friend Charlie and we had a great interaction. He seems to really like me. And then and for me, at least when I was in a fraternity, there were 26 guys in my pledge class and 2 of them and I didn't have a great relationship. And that is where my headspace could go. It's like, oh, these guys don't like me. It's so stressful. But I just thought about it. I was like, I got 26 people in this pledge class. I interacted with 10 of them today and 8 of them went great. That helps me to realize this isn't the end of the world, that this one person doesn't like you. And
what you'll realize, you can also expand sort of your imagination, is, this person looked at me funny. That means you can take these questions apart. Yeah. Wait a second. Does that mean that he doesn't like me, or does that mean that he had an itch, or does
No.
that mean that?
Well, I'll tell you. Spoiler for this one person: he's incredibly insecure and unhappy.
Yeah,
and he didn't like me because he was angry all the time and needed an outlet for it. And me and him are fine now. You know, however many years later, because he's matured and gone past his insecurity and his inner rage. But at the time, he just would lash out at whoever's nearby. And so I'm like, oh man, it's so weird. Should I blame myself? Why is this? Because he did have friends that he didn't do it to. But on the whole, the world is just a lashing for this guy because he grew up in a way that made him miserable. And now that he's not like that, what do you know? Me and him could be in a room hanging out, have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And so, I think this idea of not necessarily ascribing, even if someone is a dick to you, it's not necessarily because of anything you did.
The leap that's being made in what this exercise, and there's many others that you can do, is that there was a particular behavior, which I assume meant a particular thing, which then means a particular outcome for me. And at every stage in that, you're assuming the worst case scenario, which is rarely the case. Like the look they gave you might not have been ascribed to the emotion. The emotion that they had might not have been because of you. It might be because you remind them of someone in their past.
Them disliking you, genuinely disliking you, might not be because you are whatever you're beating yourself up about. It might be because they are jealous of you. Or because they, I don't know, had someone in their life that beat them. And like, I'm saying, let's say they hate you. Let's say they hate Charlie Hooper. Right? That's true. Oh, they looked at me funny because they don't like me. Okay, I'm going to assume that's true. They don't like me because I, Charlie Hooper, have flaws. Maybe. And we can dive into that. You can use it as an opportunity for growth. But it could be because you look like their uncle who used to beat them. So even if they do dislike you, you don't, it's not immediately the case that it's because you're evil or bad or wrong or a loser. You know, it could be because of any number of things that have nothing to do with you as you actually are. It's just you as the outlet they perceive you to be. This is
the reason that I used to believe that relationships are everything, because my previous approach would have been to mend the relationship or get other relationships. And my new approach is only if you include the relationship with yourself, because ultimately your willingness to buy into whatever the belief that they are pushing on you about the way that you are is the best place to address this problem. Why am I so prone to buy into a belief? And by the way, not just you, this is humanity. That I am wrong, bad, like what is it inside of me that feels ultimately unworthy? And how come that is so easily triggered? That's where I think tons and tons of life-changing growth can occur. But of course, charisma is important too. This is just the piece that I'm most fascinated with today. Any other questions?
Yeah, let's do one more, Angel, and then save the rest for Monday, which is only in a couple
few days.
Of days.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I have a question from Ozzy. Ozzy says, I'm a 23-year-old and I've been dating several girls now through dating apps. I have no problem getting matches, but I have a hard time getting a second date. I either get ghosted or they give me the school's getting busy excuse when I get in touch with them after the first date. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, and I hope you guys could discuss some of the habits men make on the first date that prevent them from getting a second date.
This is so funny.
If you guys have your own personal experiences on that would be great as well.
We have a video called Why You Aren't Getting a Second Date. It was one of the I mean, I don't think it's a great title, but my goodness, it's I think it's going to fit you exactly. It could be any number of things in your particular case. But if they're showing up, there's probably an initial attraction. They're interested either in the way you look or what you wrote or the way that you texted. So there's three things that you're going to want to consider that this video will take you through. The first is that initial level of interest, right? How is conversation flowing between you two? The second one is, do they feel that you have standards for the people in your life? Or are you just someone who's just on these dating apps who is open to anyone? Because that makes no one feel special, right?
That makes you a less attractive person for them.
And then the last one is if they see you as a romantic partner, if there's any intimate thing, right? If there's any sort of tension building between you. And that can come down to the lingering eye contact. It can come to a lingering hand touch, or the way that you hug, or, refuse to touch them at all over the course of the date, which leads them to think that this person is not even interested in me beyond any sort of platonic relationship. So why would I want to do it again? That video will help you sort of think through these and where you might not be showing up. Could be one, could be two, could be all three. Any other things to add?
No, I mean, I think this wouldn't be my only answer, but to the extent that you have a conversation with somebody that you thought was really good and you're really surprised by, you could ask. You could say, hey, I thought we had a really great conversation. I totally respect that you don't want to see me. I'm just curious for myself, for my own growth.
Yeah.
Like, what makes you feel that way? Because that'll help you kind of.
I would not expect an honest answer. I think that's a very. I would love a world in which
especially
people,
at 23. Actually,
yeah.
If the women are 22, I take that back. If you were dating 30-year-olds, I actually think you'd get a better answer.
You might get it. You might, but it's tough to be aware of that, and then even tougher perhaps to write it down and say it. So hopefully that video will help, though. I know you got to go to your dentist.
Yeah.
Cool. This podcast is sponsored by Charisma University. We need to have I'll record a thing for Charisma University. I'll read some testimonials. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you guys showing up. We'll see you in just a couple of days. Let us know if you liked the twice a week or if you thought that it was worse quality because of that. And let us know about some of the business questions that you may have.
Yeah.
Like that.
Definitely let us know about the business questions. Also, I feel like we went deep on more personal stuff. I tried to make it relatable to other people, but I don't know. I hope people find that interesting. Let us know if that's...
Or we'll stop. Yeah, this is, again, 2 Venn diagrams, right? My interests and what you guys want. I'm interested in a lot of things, so let me know what you like that I'm doing, and I'll stop the rest.
Yeah, we can stick it to just current events
Ben and I will talk
and
about our
audience
personal
questions.
lives separately.
Or if it's interesting, let us know. We can talk more about it.
Awesome. All right, thank you, everybody. Cheers. Peace.
Cool.